as they get better. Okay, and that's the physio's job, is to try and get them those low-level, boring exercise that everybody hates, and then get them on board for long enough that they get better. Oh, well, this is getting better. And then start working with the trainer and start trying to get their program sorted so they keep doing rehab throughout, which we'll talk about later. The other few things I want you to remember is some people have a bit of a disadvantage. Some people are completely hypermobile on one side. They might have been a tennis player since they were a kid, and then they stopped doing that. So lots and lots and lots of tennis or lots and lots of squash. They got quite a loose shoulder. It was very good while they're doing it because it's very dominant. All right. And then they stop doing that sort of exercise, but they've still got a loose shoulder. They lose all the coordination and the control because they haven't done it for 10 years. They start wanting to go back to the gym, start doing work in the gym with a loose shoulder, and they don't have the control there. And they start getting injured. And they go, why is my good shoulder getting injured now? And that may be because of that problem. It might be an overload problem because their other shoulder, say it's their left shoulder, is the weak shoulder, and they start doing, say, a military press like this, and their weak shoulder is not as coordinated, not as strong, but you're expecting it to do what the right shoulder can do. And that's when they break down. And they don't feel it for a while until they start getting impingement. Yeah. So if they've been working for a long period, they've got, the thing is your shoulder blade should have been abducted by then. So that's working. Can you see this one? Not only is it winging, now when you look, if you try and get your 3D brain on, that shoulder blade is sitting like that. And what you've got to remember, and elevate. Okay? And then you can move your arm up. Otherwise, you can only get to there. All right? So if I can't raise if my shoulder blade is not coming up, I'll catch and get impingement early, won't I? Because if I can't get my shoulder blade open and up, my cranium is going to catch on my humerus. All right? So I have to get abducted shoulder blade. And you'll see in this guy, he's winging already, which means it's not working. So when you're winging, you're not going to get abduction. Therefore, you won't be able to get your arm up to 180 degrees without impingement. And you'll see he just can't raise it there. There it is. See that? Now, you've probably all seen that before. Some of you may feel like, oh, that still looks like my shoulder blade. Right? Some people have this on both sides. And we've got clients at the moment that have winging on both sides just naturally. They just don't have good serratus anterior. Yet they're doing lots and lots of classes, and the shoulder that breaks down is the weaker one. Okay, so they've got problems on both sides, but it's the weaker or less coordinated side that gets the problem. Now, to try and rehab those people who have already got this as a problem and then get shoulder impingement because of that, you have to go all the way back and try and fix that, and that takes months and months and months of getting that muscle working, which is why a lot of people don't recover from this very well unless they've got a good trainer or a good physio helping them through it and they get on board with it. Let me show you a little more subtle than that. So this is my patient the other day. And he has shoulder impingement. Now, the lighting's not that great. Let's see if you can see that. Can we drop the lights off the top of this, in front of the screen? Can we do that? Not sure? Just the lights at the front, just here. You're not sure how to do that? Okay. It is the left shoulder that's the problem. Okay, I'll give you a hint now. Can you see the difference already, what's happening on the left shoulder? Higher than the right. Okay, so his traps is already, see that little divot there? See that bulge of his traps? Okay, so his left traps is already activated in that position. He's already ready to go. Now, what happens is, it's not that subtle on the way on the concentric phase, but it is on the eccentric phase. Going nuts, and his upper trap going nuts. And what's happened is, on the way down, see his shoulder blade still sitting out at an angle here? And this one's almost vertical. So he's dropped down way too quickly on that, because what's happened is his lower trap and his serratus anterior have just let go and said, no, can't do that. And the upper trap's trying to hold it. It's saying, oh, you know, don't let it drop down. That's why it's trying to work very hard. And the rhomboids are trying to pull back to stabilise. unfortunately he gets stuck in that little bit of pattern because we haven't taken his pain away yet. So he has to do that pattern because he can't switch on his serratus, he can't switch on his lower trap. Now, has anyone got something like that we can see live? Do you want to jump up? Yep, come up. Yep, for sure. We're looking for a painful arc. Okay, if it's from 0 to 30 degrees, from here to here, they're in a bit of trouble. Right, so if I've got someone, do you mind popping your shirt off? Is that all right? And you can turn around and face this way if you like. We're looking from 0 to 30 degrees. Which shoulder's the sore one? Okay, turn around and face that way. So I'm just going to guess and see if this works. He's looking right so far? Yep. If you put your thumbs out to the side for me, yep, and I want you to slightly go up above your head, all the way up. A different problem than just classic supraspinatus issue. And sometimes the shoulder blade muscles are fine. It's just that when you raise your arm, okay, and your pecs and your front delt, pull that bone forward, your rotator cuff is not holding it in the socket perfectly and it goes too far anterior translation, which gives you stress loading pain in the front, and the subscapularis is going to go, oh my God, you know, what am I doing? And you need that subscapularis for pushing forward. And that may be your problem. Okay? But no matter what, get that assessed and see what the problem really is, because you may find that you're doing different exercises to someone with classic abduction impingement. Okay? Yep.
So muscle imbalances, are they going to much, what you were saying, the pecs is over strong, deltoids over strong as opposed to rotator cuff? Is it going to cause impingement?
Yeah, you can cause that. Yeah.
So I mean, it could be as simple as some stretching to relieve the impingement or not?
No, not necessarily, because you've got to look at the root cause. If the root cause is too much, if you think their pecs or delts are stronger than their rotator cuff, then you need to increase the strength of the rotator cuff to match what is going on with their pecs and delts. And the reason a lot of people get why is they've got, I mean, I'm training in the gym, I'm doing lots of stuff, it's my rotator cuff not as good as my pecs and delts and lats. It's because the winging, elevation, and of course they'll be in here. Most of the time it's tightness in the back of the shoulder blade, even though the pain might be in the front. And it's quite funny if you guys had shoulder impingement, been to the physio, and they go, yeah, the pain's sort of here, and they focus on loosening up the back, and all of a sudden, but you worked on a different muscle where my pain is, but now I haven't got any pain. Because they're changing the mechanics of what's going on. And sometimes people just come in and they have the shoulder impingement, yeah, sore, and I just loosen them up and they're already better. Because some of the tightness is causing that impingement as well. So remember, the shoulder blade doesn't move from 0 to 30. Past 30, it's got to move, 2 to 1. Okay, so 2 movement humerus, 1 movement shoulder blade to get me up. If I don't have enough movement on scapula, I'll get impingement some way, at some point in there. All right, so training with your shoulders down is sort of like a quick sort of compensatory fix, but it's not the answer at all. Yeah, when we go through the exercise, you'll see what I mean of how to move the shoulder blade. A lot of it is, it's very hard to feel the movement and see the movement, and especially on someone, okay, no, don't move there, move, okay, a little bit more. You've actually got to get the muscles working properly and get the strength going through exercise, and then your movement pattern usually naturally comes back. Because the movement pattern of this, you don't think about. You don't go 2 to 1, 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 2 to 1. Okay, your brain does that for you. And it's got a perfect rhythm, unless you're very uncoordinated. Okay, we've had a massive injury. It's got a perfect rhythm. It just works perfectly. If there's nothing negative telling it not to. The negative things are pain, inflammation, okay, weakness. All right, so if you try as hard as you like to get that perfect movement, but you've got weakness and pain, it's never going to happen. You're always going to go, the brain's going to go, not happening, compensate. All right, so you've got to work on the things that are weak to give that brain an environment of, okay, yep, got all the right messages there, he's worked on that, that's strong, that's working, no problems, got good messages, I'll let that pattern movement happen. All right? So don't try and think, oh, I've got to try and work on my rhythm. Provide the brain with good environment and then the rhythm will come. Some people who've got very bad, like that guy you saw in the video with the really, really bad wing, he'll have to go through a lot of neuro rehab to try and help that, and hands-on stuff, and got shoulder blade, and that's a lot of hands-on physio. That's a much more complex case than probably what you'll see. Testing stuff. Okay, so when people have got shoulder impingement, okay, we can test it, painful arc, you've got it, right? We as physios need to know, okay, what's exactly the injury there so we can tailor make and focus our problem a little bit better. If they've got a supraspinatus tear, when they push outwards against resistance very lightly, it'll be painful straight away. You can almost guarantee that when someone pushes against something, outwards, external rotation, about 10 of their strength, and there's pain immediately, it's most likely a tear in their supraspinatus. Okay? You can almost bank every dollar on that. Empty bear can sign is this. You've probably seen that before. So they rotate their hands in, a little bit elbow bent, and then try and push up against resistance, and they hurt. Okay? They don't get to pain at that point, but as soon as they try and push and use the tendons, their rotator cuff to lift up, they hurt, and that's usually a tear as well. Okay? And when we do what we call passive range through quadrant, we push them through a position like this when they're on their back, and that's testing whether they're actually getting a catching under the acromion, whether it's the bursa or the tendons. We can really push them and see if we squash those structures, are they inflamed and do they hurt? Or is it simply just a weakness issue? Okay, so you guys can sort of use that if you like. We've gone through those videos. Okay, so what do? Best thing to work on, if you see those sort of signs, a physio, get a good diagnosis first, because a lot of the time people will go, if they get the diagnosis from the physio and you refer them to a physio, yep, I've got that problem, okay, cool, I'm on board. It just won't happen because the pain is not reminded. Then you won't just go straight for the band and start doing this. All right? And then you also got to think isokinetic and isometric. Isometric meaning not moving, isokinetic meaning moving. And some people who are really sore just start with just pushing their hand against the wall for external rotation, okay, or push it, or adduction or abduction, okay, pushing against something because they can't move through range yet because they're so sore. And a lot of the scapular stabilization stuff is isometric to start with because remember from the first 30 degrees that shoulder blade is not supposed to move. So if those muscles are weak and it moves all around and the upper trap's doing this to it, okay, there's no point doing isokinetic work if you haven't even got the work first. So you see a lot of this shoulder stability stuff is isometric and then moving to isokinetic. And you also see, what have I got here? Yeah. Oscillatory work, which is, this is isokinetic. Oscillatory meaning this movement. Okay? So trying to start getting that very quick rotation movement of the rotator cuff working. Reps and sets, my experience, try and get 4 sets of 15 as your goal. They may start off with 2 sets of 8 because they're sore and they have fatigue and they can't do anything. But you're trying to get 4 sets of 15 on isokinetic. Isometric is 10-second holds and trying to do 10 of them. If they can get up to 20 of them, that's great. But 10-second holds. So think isometric 10-second holds, isokinetic 4 sets of 15 reps. You've got to get that endurance up. And you'll find that because if they start using a band here and here, going, that's 8, didn't even feel it. I'll go harder. And then their load is too hard. You find they get this light band and go, what is this? And they get to the 3rd set of 15 and go, oh my God, this is really working me now. They've got to get through 4 sets of 15 on whatever colour they've been issued and then increase the strength of that band after that. Yep.
You mentioned for the eccentric was focus with your 15 repetitions.
Yep.
Focus more on the
Yes, exactly. Yep. So 1 second out, 3, 2, 1 on the way back. Okay, because that gives them enough time to try and work out how they're going to control the shoulder blade, which I'll go through in a minute. Okay. Prone scapular press, wall press, one arm skydive, opposite arm leg raise, one arm row. You've got all these on your sheets. Okay, they sort of go on order. This is your upper trap. Here, can you see that triangle of how it's going to work? Serratus anterior pulling out, lower trap pulling down, upper trap pulling up to get that shoulder blade moving. So that alignment of the socket is perfect so I can get my arm up in the air with my delts and my rotator cuff. Right. Let's go through these ones. That's a good order for you of difficulty and stabilisation. Yep. Yes. So TheraBands is an increasing resistance as my muscle shortens. And as we know, when a muscle shortens, it gains relative strength. So therefore, when a muscle shortens and gains relative strength, I need that resistance increasing to keep it even throughout the movement. So I'm getting even resistance throughout the whole movement as relative to how strong the muscle is. Okay? Whereas a cable does the same sort of thing, but it's just using gravity. And it's going that way, vertical, on a weight. So even in the air, the weight is going that way. With the band, it is directly related to the axis of movement here. Always prefer bands over cables. You only go to cables when you need to really stack up the weight and you're going back to functional movement or the training that they want to do, which is pull downs and stuff like that. And the reason using cables is because you can't do a lat pull down with one arm, you use a cable. Okay, and then they get that right, their left hand right versus their right, and then they can do lat pull downs. And dumbbells, yeah, I see people doing this in the gym, and I almost feel like I want to go up and slap them. All right, because the weight is that way. So they're basically doing bicep work and a tiny little bit of external rotation work. There's no resistance going that way against my muscle. Does that make sense? They might go on their side, but again, there's only gravity changes here. Okay? And they usually do it because it's easier than the band. You try and go on your side and use the band, gravity and the band. Drop down and push up in that position. And you're trying to get protraction only. And that'll help get their shoulder blade flat. And when they're doing it correctly, you'll get that nice flat shoulder blade cross. Okay? Just make sure you don't let them drop down into retraction too early, because the eccentric phase is very important, because you're working striatus eccentrically, which is how you build the strength the quickest. So they just drop, they're not going to get any work done properly. Right? The harder one is working on a wall. Now, if I do it this way, the reason I've got the thumb behind the back is I'm feeling what that shoulder blade is doing. Okay? I want the shoulder blade moving away from my thumb and then coming back to my thumb. Now, most people in their brain, their pattern of movement, as soon as they start doing a press, they want to do a push-up. Their brain just says, bend your elbow. You go, no, don't bend your elbow. They go, what am I supposed to do? And they've got to learn a new movement, because their movement is that. Right? So it's letting that shoulder blade come back and then pushing it forward. Right? If that's too difficult for them, they have to do it two hands. Okay? Silly little movement, boring as hell, makes a massive difference. But they need to do it a lot and every day. Okay? One arm skydive, looking like you're skydiving out of a plane. Okay? One arm, meaning your lower traps are working the most. So when you're doing this one, make sure they don't go and lift their shoulder blade up with their upper traps. You've got to guide them. That shoulder blade's got to come back and down towards the opposite hip. Okay? So if you think back and down towards the opposite hip, so their bias is working on their mid to lower traps. Okay? And then you can add in some external rotation. That's an isometric hold. 10 seconds, yes. Yeah, don't let them go like that. Okay? Because we're trying to stop that compensation patterning. Right? So don't let them go and go, yeah, like that. Got it. Okay? They've got to get it. And it takes a lot. You might spend 20 minutes on that. And it's hard when that's boring. When they progress to that, obviously get them into external rotation. Bear in mind, if they haven't got range of movement like me, see what I'm doing with my wrist? This is showing my flaws here. Trying to get my external rotation by extending my wrist. All right? And that's as far as I can't even get to 0 degrees there. Can I? I'm sort of sitting below. Do you think I should be shoulder pressing above my head? I haven't got impingement though. But I don't have the range of movement in my shoulder joint because I'm just naturally really tight. I should work on it. But I choose not to do shoulder press. Okay? I'll do front press and I'll do 45. But I will not get here because I just can't get there. And if I keep doing that, I'm going to get impingement just due to my biomechanics. Which one? First one? Yep, so I'm here. And I'm going up into that position there and then holding to there. Okay? And you're trying to teach them to say, don't use your upper traps. Get that lower trap working. Right? Awesome exercise. Yes, you use your rhomboids, but not as much as your lower trap, because the way your rhomboids are angled, they're angled up on and this way. So if you're pulling down, you're not going to use them as much. Does that make sense? Yep. If you don't understand, review your anatomy. Okay, opposite arm leg raise. My favourite by far, because this one does serratus anterior and your rotator cuff isometrically. Most people use it as a core exercise, right? Yep, train your core. Now, big flaws of this one is people do this. I don't know if you can see me. I'll do it this way. I'll stick my bum here, all right? They will go like that. They'll just move completely, all right? So if I go from here, they might raise their arm and they'll shift onto their knees. The first thing they do, because they don't trust their shoulder. So the injured shoulder here, as soon as they raise their arm, they'll shift away. And then you try and move the opposite leg and they'll shift right onto this one here. And there's hardly any weight here. That's not really doing much core anyway. So with this one, and you guys got to practice this, it's really, really, really hard. Because what you've got to try and do is have full protraction, okay? And then I've got to shift all my weight out of my right arm into my left without moving. Okay, so I'm 3 points now, even. 33, 33, 33, yeah? And then what I've got to try and do is put 50-50. So then I've got to put all my weight through my right knee with my left hand, and then you'll see I'll start shaking in a minute. And then I've got to float like that. And then I've got to do a 10-second hold. And most people, if you watch my shoulder here, I don't know if you can see this, most people when they get to there and they move the leg, they'll get to there and then they'll start dropping. And they'll go into retraction. Because this serratus goes, I can't do that. Right? So you've got to constantly prompt them to get up into protraction. Okay, trying to get that serratus endurance and strength building in isometric position. Yep. The whole time that rotator cuff is going, oh my God, and trying to hold on isometrically, which is great because it's not hurting it. You're not actively moving it. People who are really injured will find that hurts a little bit. Okay, so you've got to watch that. You may just do just one arm. Okay, not the full load. But you've got to practice that yourself before you even think about giving that to clients, because it is really hard and it's really taxing, because they're doing 10 sets of that, of 10 seconds. It's going to take them 5 minutes. All right? It's a hard thing to do, but it's an awesome exercise. You can then add on Pilates stuff you want to, circles and squares and things, so the arms and legs to challenge here. The more you get this better and your back better, the better everything connects. The more core stability, the more posture is working, the better things are going to happen, all right? Therabands as well. You can start putting therabands on arms and legs, and you can make it very interesting if you like. But this exercise, people ask, what are the exercises I keep in my regime? Keep this one in. Bottom line, keep it in. Okay, warm up. So, you're going to do bench today? Let's warm up with a bit of one arm, one leg, do a bit of core. What you're secretly doing is trying to get their rotator cuff really working and their shoulder blade really fired up. Okay, one arm rows. You've probably seen this a lot as well. Okay, make sure with the one arm rows you are shoulder blade first, arm second. A lot of people will arm and shoulder blade together. As soon as you do that movement there, okay, I haven't got my shoulder blade retracted enough at that point there. So when I pull back, I will pull back there like that, and then I'll eventually get it back. But that point there, I'm irritating. And this really sets up your pattern of movement for when you're going to do rows and pull-ups and that sort of thing. Okay, it's getting that shoulder blade back first and then pull through. The trick is now, I haven't got my hand back there, but feeling that shoulder blade come back to my finger when I pull through. And the trick is keep it on my finger eccentrically as I move my arm, and then let it go forward. Okay, so prompts of that is shoulder blade, arm, shoulder blade. When you're telling a client. Simple things they need to remember. No, shoulder blade, arm, and then what they'll do is they'll get to this point there, okay, and then put their shoulder forward. Okay, and just put their finger behind that, or put your finger there, and tell them to keep it there. So when they are rowing, they are trying to train their brain to work correct lower traps a little bit, but correct movement. is the key. You're promoting correct movement to the brain and promoting that nice messaging system to try and get that movement better so it happens naturally when they go heavy. Yep. Yeah, if they're too tight, they'll start doing that.
So you sort of just go back to the retraction and get that.
Yeah, you can go. Some people go all the way back because they can keep retracting. Okay, they can keep getting that elbow back further because they can keep going. But as soon as it starts doing that, you've gone too far. So some people will be too tight here. They get the point. They want to push the elbow back and it just rolls. Okay, so they can only work in their available range. Don't try and push it. Isometric ball press. Many of you might not have seen this one. This is taking serratus anterior to another level. So what I'm doing is I'm pushing backwards and upwards on a diagonal. So you go into a 45-degree press position, put the ball on there, and the reason we're using a Swiss ball is because you have to balance it and control it rather than weight, which makes you switch on way more postural systems in your brain, which is what you need for this sort of rehab. And I'm pushing that angle. Okay? But I'm not pushing and extending my arm. Okay? I'm going from here and trying to get protraction. I'm doing that movement. So my elbow and my shoulder have to work together. I can't do this movement and I can't do that movement. Alright, so when I push up into the ball and lift my shoulder blade off the floor, it's that movement there. And then I hold it, 10-second holds, maximal push. Yep. You cool with that? Sorry, you're just doing a push. Yeah, alright. One arm wall press. Now this is active now. The last one was isometric. This is isokinetic. Same movement, but now I'm getting in, so it's a press up on a wall with one arm. The trick with this though is make sure that their shoulder blade doesn't crash back. So when they come into the wall, they go bang and do that. They've got to slowly control, and usually having that as a guide, and when they press forward, they've got to push that shoulder blade forward. Again, that's getting their bench pressing mechanism better. So there's a good warm-up for bench. Okay, just remember that movement. You've got to get that movement going. All right. That's taking your lower traps to another level. Isokinetic. And you can do it isometric. You can hold it up there for 10 seconds, or you can do a kinetic movement, up and down, up and down, up and down, up and down. Again, look at people like me with my range. I purposely did this so I can show you that I'm not perfect. Look at my range there. Now, why do you think it's worse in that position than it was on the floor? What else do you think is tired of me that is affecting my shoulder blade of not being able to get back and not the rotator cuff not being able to get back? What do you think? Anyone? Thoracic. Okay, so my thoracic spine movement is atrocious. So I haven't got enough extension genetically. I've just got a fixed kyphosis. I don't have enough extension that way. So when I come up in that movement, I'm already rounded. Right? So I can't get back. I can't get my shoulder blade back on my spine because it's too rounded. Right? So watch people like that. Fixed kyphosis. They might have had Sherman's disease when they were a little kid. Okay, you've got to watch those sort of people because they can't necessarily do everything that you want them to do. So you might omit that exercise. You might just do the backward one. Use that TRX. Awesome, but use it eccentrically. Okay, 2 up, hold it there, 1 down, control that movement. So you're training your stabilizer, like your lower traps, to control eccentrically and then let it go. You're also controlling a pattern of movement of push and pull. Teaching that brain when you've got to move the shoulder blade, when that arm's got to come back. Awesome exercise. All right, 2 up, 1 down. Supine ball press. I'm using a medicine ball for postural control. I'm not using a dumbbell because when I grip that dumbbell, I'm going to start using all these other muscles that are power related. Doesn't matter how heavy the ball is, it's about activation, getting it working. And it's just this movement here. Don't move the elbow. And this is what we call open chain. So open chain serratus. On the floor was closed chain. Same movement, exactly the same movement as that. One's open, one's closed. I need more postural strength to be able to do an open chain movement than I do a closed chain movement. That's why we start with the closed chain, move to the open chain. Okay, a great exercise. If you guys haven't done that before, you'll be surprised how difficult again that one is as well. All right, make sense? So rotator cuff. Now we as physio start rotator cuff day 1. Sometimes day 2, depends on how sore they are. But they've got to have, remember in your brain, scapular stability over rotator cuff stability or strength. Think of your muscles. You've got 4 of them. Infraspinatus, teres minor, supraspinatus, subscap. Remember, yes, they're 4 different muscles. They got their biases. Okay, that one does rotation, that one does abduction. They work as a unit to stabilise and keep that ball in the centre of the socket. That is your primary goal. All right. Then you work on, strength and that sort of stuff. All right. But when we've got an injured supraspinatus, we can work on the other muscles individually. That's why we do band work, because we know that supraspinatus is working a little bit every time we work any one of those muscles. Now, if I can build up strength around it, it helps support it, helps you give more overall strength, and then I start getting better rotation control and function. Then I can start not impinging and working on my supraspinatus later. So, order of exercise, probably that order there is the safest. Depends on the injury. Again, the physio may advise you different exercises in different orders. Extension, that movement there, all right, is your first one. Make sure when you pull back, you don't roll your shoulder blade forward. You learn everything you've learned about scapular stability. It has to come back as you go back. You can only go back as far as you can control. Boring exercises. Boring exercise number 2. Like, oh my God, this is so boring. And it makes a massive difference. You start working on little shoulder blade muscles, 4 sets of 15, every day, a couple of days, all of a sudden they go, that feels better. Because they're getting muscles engaged to help them with their movement, stop that impingement. Okay, very safe exercise, especially if people like really raw. The first thing they can usually do is that. And it's a forgotten exercise. Adduction. Now, adduction using teres minor and infraspinatus to pull in. Think about squeezing a muscle in your armpit. Keep your elbow straight. Start at 45 degrees, have the tension there, and pull inwards. Make sure they're not, rotating forward or rotating back. Keep that shoulder in the centre of the scapula centred. All right, this is working on those muscles, because when I come up like this, I want my adductors making sure they're strong enough to keep that ball down and not rise up. Does that make sense? So I work on down, 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 down. We do this in the clinic. You get 3 sets of tennis, and then they go, that's better. How can that be better? I didn't even work my supraspinatus. Well, you did. Okay, but you fired up and activated all those muscles that control depression of that ball, because your problem was elevation. Now you've got less impingement. Great. All right, work on that one. It's a forgotten one as well. People don't do this. They start doing this. All right, so work on the adduction.
What's the tempo of the speed for that one again?
About 3 seconds. Yep. Okay, 1 down, 3 seconds eccentric. Okay. Some people with really bad scapular control have to go slower than that, because their shoulder blade moves too quickly. Okay, the classic, yeah? Anyone who hasn't seen this is lying, all right? Classic, and everyone starts doing it. Yeah, I've done some rotator cuff stuff. Okay, but you imagine we just went through about 12 exercises that should be done as well. Okay, so this one is, again, if they really saw they're doing an isometric first, but this is isokinetic exercise. They have got to work in the pain-free range. You can't go and go, oh, it hurts out there. There's no point in doing that. Work in the range they've got. And sometimes they're really tight, so they've only got a little amount of range. But work in the range they've got. Big mistakes are keeping this elbow locked against your side. Do not have it down here. Have it out here. Having it down there is cheating, and using your adductors to lock that and say, this is easy, yay, okay? It's nice and stable. Having it here is harder, because now I've got to work it on an axis that I'm not sure of. So you've got to work on this axis here, and so the elbow is not allowed to move. So when I go from here to here, my elbow pivots on the axis. I'm not allowed to do this. Because if I've got a sore supraspinatus and I abduct as I externally rotate, it's going to hurt. Because I'm going to load it up too much. I don't want to load it up too much. I want to load up my external rotators. Right? To make this harder, like they may spend 1 or 2 weeks doing that, then they move to 45. When you guys move to 45 with the internal and external rotation, face 45 degrees to the band. Okay, so think 45 and 45. This is 0, 45, 0, 45. And pull on that angle there. So now my axis of rotation's here. What am I using now more than I did before? Supraspinatus. Okay, so I'm using my abductor to hold it there while I'm doing this. I'm not doing isokinetic much on supraspinatus. I'm doing isokinetic on my lateral rotators. And my supraspinatus is holding, controlling, holding, controlling, holding, controlling. I'm building up the isometric strength first before I move into isokinetic. And then the last one's 90. So face 90. Okay? If I start doing this when it's not strong enough, I'm just going to impinge it. Especially when my shoulder blade's not working well enough. Yeah? Okay, how are we going to make it harder? Make sure you warm up that rotator cuff. And every time you're doing stuff that's close to conventional training or harder stuff, you've got to apply the principles that you were using before. I.e., when I pull back, I've got to make sure I keep that, what I learnt, all right, or that pressing movement, all right? Let's go through these ones. Bosu push-up, big thing with that, don't let those shoulder blades crash together. Make sure your weight is over that Bosu. It's harder than you think. Bosu, because you're getting a bit of stability work, you get a wee more posture work going, you have to work on your core a little bit more, all right? And it stops them from doing too many push-ups, all right? One arm cable pull down, this is a precursor to lat pull downs, to chin-ups, all right? Again, you're going in that angle, so I'm not in full elevation, trying to do it that way. I'm still out of my impingement zone really, but I can only do that when I've got enough strength to be able to be stable in that position without impingement. Make sense? That's why it's down the track a little bit. This one you can add up the weights, stronger and stronger and stronger. Apply the principles. You've got to pull down and back and through. Okay, and then hold and shoulder blade. Again, shoulder blade, arm, arm, shoulder blade. All right, so that gives them enough strength to get to this so they can press. TRX, more difficult push-up, more difficult bench because it's all wobbly. The harder you go, the further you go down, you will know TRX. Okay? Very difficult to get their full protraction with that. Prone-wise, gets your upper traps stronger if they're weaker, but also teaching you to not use momentum. And front press is a precursor to shoulder press. So from here, it's like an Arnold press, but it's not sort of as much rotation. Remember, arm, shoulder blade, arm. Most people want to go bang, straight up. Okay, so you've got to get that thumb behind and make sure from 0 to 30 it's not moving, and then it elevates and then comes down early. A lot of people just don't leave it up, they leave it up there. Okay, it's got to come down. That you use for your shoulder pressing mentality. And as you get better, go wider to 45. They can do that, they can start doing weights. And then this is all about, have they got the range of movement? Have you done all your homework? And have they actually got the range of movement to be able to shoulder press? Okay? Long road, isn't it? All the way up to get back to a shoulder press. So a lot of people skip those steps. Things to be remembered. Remember, just to finish off, if they're tight like me, thoracic, get them on the foam roller, loosen up as much of that soft tissue as you can to get it back to maybe they've just got a little bit of thoracic abnormality, maybe it's just a lot of tightness from sitting in an office. Shoulder chest movement, okay, if my pecs and my pecs are so tight because they're so big, not mine though, that I can't get back here, okay, work on stretching that out long term, all right, it won't get fixed in a week, it's going to get fixed in 6 months. Chest versus back, if they're too much chest, not enough back, they will just sit naturally forward a little bit more. They'll find it harder to raise their arms. Tendon tears, if it's diagnosed and they've got a permanent tear in there, you need to be aware they're probably not going to do classic shoulder press ever again. But they need to be educated on that, why they can't do it. Yeah? So choose front press over normal press. Front press meaning in here and 45 degrees. It's a functional movement more than this. This is for bodybuilding mags. Okay, you don't put a box up in a cupboard like this. You put it up like that. Okay, and you're in a shoulder, not in shoulder impingement position. Here you're always in shoulder impingement. You have to have everything working perfectly. Is it worth it? Sometimes it is. Okay, and some people get away with it. But if you've got someone with problems and they're not quite right, there's still a difference, choose front over classic. And again, incline press over that way. Okay, I wouldn't do military press ever with these sort of clients. Dumbbells over a fixed bar, meaning left and right, because they're using a lot more postural muscles, left and right, which is great for strength. But if they've got a fixed bar, I don't need my rotator cuff and scapular stabilizer as much as I used to with dumbbells. Therefore, if you're using a fixed bar, you're promoting power over posture. Will you then slowly get worse again? Right? And swimming. If they're a swimmer, get them back swimming. Other things to be aware of, long lever. So front raises are out, right? And lateral raises are usually out for these sort of people. They don't have perfect control. Which is all the conventional stuff. You think, why can't they get back to it? Well, they can get back to it once they're absolutely perfect. Yeah. Okay. Think about programs. Whoops. So we aim to get them pain-free at rest the first 2 weeks. Okay, pain-free, easy. They need to have a pain-free arc at 2 to 3 weeks. So they need to, this is to get them back training. They need to have this pain-free. Otherwise the physio hasn't done their job or the injury is really bad. Then they need to be doing rehab below 90 degrees. They should be all pain-free down here. Everything's great. All down here, everything's pain-free. 3 to 4 weeks is how you progress it. So at the 4-week mark, you should be looking at getting sort of above 90 up into here, pressing and external rotation up here. Okay, and diagonals. Only at the 4-week mark. Maybe at the 8-week mark, depending on their injury. And then normal weights or training or sport is way down at sort of 6 or 8 weeks. They need to start integrating that in. Now you as a trainer, or trainers out there might think, well, so they're not training me until for 6 weeks. Yes, they are. They're just not doing conventional stuff that you used to do in your program. They're doing rehab with you and core and running and all their leg stuff. Yeah, you're just pulling out stuff with the physio, pulling out, okay, pull out, put this in, put this in, put this in. Because if they're seeing the physio once, they're seeing you twice, there's 3 times they can train with a person helping them. So you need to have those exercises in. If you're not doing them, then they're not getting their rehab. Like I said, using a warm-up. Choose exercise on body part days. So if they think, oh, I'm going to do press, what do I use in my press? I use my subscat more, so I might do some internal rotations. Because they won't have time to do the whole rehab thing. It's just not feasible. If I'm going to do shoulder press, okay, I'll do some lateral rotators. Might do some 4 on the floor. Okay, so start those exercises and putting them in depending on what they're doing on that day. One day might be completely devoted to rehab and a bit of cardio or something. And getting back to see the physio every now and again if they start breaking down. You think things aren't working, this isn't getting right. Get them back in, get that person back on board. We talked about pumping up the tyres. Okay? So I hope that makes sense. I'm here available for questions and things like that. Come up and talk to me. One thing I want you to take home is we do, in our clinics, I'm in the east, so I'm in Bondi Junction. My colleague Dennis is in the west, Castle Hill. We do consultations, senior physiotherapy consultations for PTs at like a cheaper rate. So if you guys need consultation for yourself or you actually want to come for education one-on-one, we can do that for you. So just take down our details. I don't think that's on your homework sheet, so take down my details and yeah, come and see us and we'll help you out. It's almost like workshops, things like that. Our Facebook's up there. Everything that we release, like videos, articles, exercise, all that stuff, it was all released on our Facebook. So just go to our Facebook account and like that so you get those feeds coming through for you. You've got the handouts, which are on our website if you click on our Filex thing. But the exercise sheets with all the cues of what we went through today, if you go to that website there, if you go to the exercise library, you'll see that shoulder and scapular exercises. Click on that, it's a PDF you can download and print off yourself. Okay, and that's the one we use for our clients. All right? And all those videos I went through today with you are on our YouTube. So either go to YouTube and type in Physio Fitness Australia, AUST, or just click on the YouTube link on our website and you'll see those. They're in a little playlist folder if you want to go through them. They're great to use for your clients to show them, even on your phone, this is what's wrong with you. So they go, oh, okay, got it. All right, very good way of explaining. All right, hope you enjoyed it. Thanks a lot.
you've got my shoulder here, and I've taken away everything. All you're left with is the shoulder blade. This bony area here is your scapula, also known as your shoulder blade. Here we have the collarbone, which is also known as the clavicle, and then your upper arm bone, known as the humerus. All of these muscles that you can see attached are collectively known as the rotator cuff. The rotator cuff is made up of 4 main muscles. The first one is the supraspinatus, then you've got the infraspinatus, teres minor and teres major, and then on the front side you've got the subscapularis. Collectively, the rotator cuff pulls the head of the humerus in towards the scapula, creating stability. Individually, all of the muscles have slightly different functions. Starting with the supraspinatus, it holds the humerus into the socket, tenses the capsule, and abducts the arm. The infraspinatus also helps to stabilize the capsule, but its main function is to externally rotate the arm. So if you were to bend your elbow and take your hand out to the side, that's external rotation. The teres minor, the one down here, also weakly helps to externally rotate your arm. And lastly, the subscapularis helps to medially rotate the arm, or internally rotate. So opposite to the infraspinatus, if you were to bend your elbow, you would be taking your hand across your body, spine of the scapula, and runs through, attaching, causing these issues. I'll use a couple of tests. The first thing I usually get people to do is to show me their ranges of movement. So I'll get them standing in front of me and get them to perform complete abduction all the way to the ceiling and back down. And then following on from that, I'll get them to lift their arms up to the front and note where both hands or both tips of fingers reach up. Quite often what you see is the side, the shoulder that has the pain will be quite restricted and will not be able to go as far up as the good side. Now on the demonstration I just did, what you might be able to see is that my left arm can reach up my back a bit. I like these because they get into those small muscles that are hard to reach when you're using a foam roller. So what you're going to do is try and get into your rotator cuff. The principle is that you find a tender point, press into it and hold in that position. If you hold long enough, that pain will start to disappear. So to get into your rotator cuff, get the ball, place it underneath your arm. With your free hand, pull so that you can get this ball further around behind you. Then come up against a wall and press in against the wall. Move around until you can find a tender point. Once you have a tender point, just stay there, relax, and apply some pressure. Maintain that pressure until that pain starts to go away, or you've done about a minute. Once a minute has passed, move to a different point and repeat the process again. Then to get up into these upper muscles, you need to do a bit more contortion. So place the ball up and over, but this time you're going to have to lean back into the wall. Lean up against the wall. Again, find those tender points, hold, and stay for about a minute. So that's pretty much all I'd recommend for now, guys. The strength band stretches and the massage balls. I would suggest you do either of those in alternate days. So for example, strength band stretches you could do on a Monday, a Wednesday and Friday, and the massage balls you could do on a Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday. And the reason I say this is because if you do either too much, you're only going to make yourself quite sore.
Stretching, you want to make sure you're relaxed. We're going to focus on specific muscles, so you're really just trying to make sure that you're focusing on that muscle, you're not bouncing, you're really relaxed, and you're just doing nice deep breathing while you're doing it. So just make sure that you're concentrating on that. You're not going to the point of pain, you're just going to the point of the stretch. So that's about a minute of the lower extremity. So now let's do the arms, the upper extremity. So with this one, you can just do some circles going forward. You can do circles going backwards. You can do big circles. You can do little circles. You can kind of do little bouncing back and forth, doing some hugs and things like that. And you can still move your feet if you want to, just to keep everything nice and warm. Anytime you stretch, you want to hold that stretch for at least 30 seconds. That's really what they found gets to the point where those GTOs, those Golgi tendon organs, finally let go and relax those muscles. So you want to really hold them for at least 30 seconds. You can hold them longer, but you don't really have to. So you can just kind of go front to back. You can do a little jumping jack motion with your arms, but you can tell I'm getting warmed up, nice and warm. So we've got about 10 seconds. So we're gonna go from head to toe. So we're gonna start off with the neck and just kind of get everything loosened up there. So now we're just gonna take that little 10-second break. Actually, it's starting into the exercise stretch. So what we're gonna do now is just some stretching of the neck, doing some circles. You don't have to go all the way around. If you don't want to, just make sure you're alternating. So if you want to go just like a side to side like this, you might get some popping. That's okay as long as it's not painful popping. That's pretty normal because you're just kind of loosening everything up. So now we're going to take a little 10-second break, and then we're going to go into stretching our upper traps in just a second. So remember, these are the ones where you want to really relax those muscles. So the upper trap stretch, push one side down, take the other hand, and just gently pull this way. So just holding that stretch for about 30 seconds. Nice and relaxed. You should feel that stretch right through here. Nice, good stretch. It shouldn't be painful. It should be nice and relaxed. Some people like to take nice deep breaths while they're doing it.
3, 2, 1.
And then relax. So I like to alternate sides back and forth. So the next one's going to be going to the other side, just to give the other side a little bit of a break.
Exercise 1.
Pushing that hand down and then going over. Again, just kind of pulling until you feel tension, not till you feel pain. If you feel pain, bring it back up a little bit. By pushing this hand down, that keeps that shoulder down just to get that nice stretch. If you're not really pushing down, or if you're not sitting down, then what happens is that shoulder tends to come up and you're not really stretching those upper traps very well. So just pushing there. So taking a little break, now we're going to do another one on each side. So just that little break in between to kind of reset the muscles, and then pushing that fist down and going back over. Getting that nice stretch all the way through, nice and relaxed. And then hold that stretch. You should feel it. Sometimes people feel it all the way up here, all the way down into that shoulder. So just nice and relaxed, holding that stretch there.
3, 2, 1. Rest.
So we're going to take that little 10-second rest. We're going to do another one on the other side, and then we're going to go into some chin tucks, and I'm going to grab the chair and sit down for those.
Exercise 1.
All right, so pushing down and then pulling towards the other side. So just getting that nice, good stretch, holding it. A lot of times if you have neck problems in general, this upper trap stretch is really good to do, because when you hold a lot of stress in your neck and shoulders, if you're working on a computer all day long, these muscles get really, really, really tight. So just nice and relaxed and stretching it all the way through. So if you're going, you should feel a little bit of a release after a little bit. So let's take a little break. So now some stuff with the chair,
2.
and we're going to do some chin tucks now.
Exercise 1.
Just bringing that chin backwards, not tucking it in, but bringing the whole head back. So if you see here, I put my finger here and pull all the way back. You don't have to hold that for 30 seconds, but we're going to go through all the stretches for 30 seconds. So pull back for about 5 seconds and then relax. I like putting my finger on my chin because it just kind of gives me a target to know how far away I'm going.
1.
And then relax. So we're going to do that set one more time, and then we'll move on to the shoulders.
3, 2,
Here we go.
1.
Finger on the chin and pull back, and you can see the that if you hold it for about 5 seconds and then you go into the triceps underneath. So really getting all those muscles around the shoulder area. And an easy way to do that is just put your arm up and grab that elbow pulling behind you. So with this one, my elbow is going back this way. So again, if this is tight, or if you have a tight shoulder and injured shoulder, this might be all you're able to do. You might only be able to go right here, and that's okay. But if you can eventually start pushing it back more, you're gonna feel that stretch right in through there. And so sometimes people who have that triceps tendonitis, that injury, they're gonna feel it right in there. So just kind of then shaking it out. And then again, we're gonna go over to the other side.
3, 2, 1.
So bringing it up and pulling back, getting that nice gentle stretch just right in there through that triceps area. And with your hand back behind, I usually just rest mine on top right there. You don't have to, you can just kind of let it hang, but I find it more comfortable if I just place it on that shoulder blade back there and nice push back. So that's always really nice and comfortable.
3, 2, 1. Rest.
And then just kind of shaking it out, taking a little break. Then we're going to go back and do one more on each side. So that little pull and pushing back. So you can see here on this side how I'm just kind of placing it on that shoulder blade. If you don't have a lot of flexibility, again, you might not be able to get it there, and you can just kind of push it this way. Sometimes even if just people put their hand like this without pushing, they're going to get a little stretch through there if it's tight. So you can do that as well. You don't necessarily have to push all the way back, because remember, you want to feel that tension, but you don't want there to be any pain in there. So then just kind of shaking it out, and we'll do one more on the other side.
3,
And then
2,
elbow up,
exercise 1.
and then nice pull back. Sometimes I'll pull back and inwards, and that will get those triceps just a little bit more if you need a little bit more of a stretch. So it's almost at an angle this way versus just straight back. It's kind of in towards your ear a little bit, and that helps get all the tricep heads versus just the one in the middle. So that's a nice way to get a little bit of an extra stretch as well. So the next one is just going to be taking your hands, opening them and closing them nice and wide. Again, kind of to open up the chest a little bit. So putting your hands out and then just pulling them all the way back. So you can see how I'm opening up my chest. And this one's more of a movement. So we're just going to do 1 30-second of this, but just kind of going up and back. Little pause at the end, just to open up that chest area. So this is still a stretch, even though it's a movement, but you're not going fast, you're not bouncing, you're holding and making it a nice smooth kind of motion, open and close. Okay, so now we're going to go to the upper back, a little bit of the lower back. One that I like that kind of stretches out the whole thing is sitting in the chair and just rolling down this way. So if you're really flexible, you can touch the ground. If you're not super flexible, you can just kind of put your hands on your shins and then just hold that stretch for about 30 seconds. So this one's a nice one because you have a nice little curl in your back. Usually if you see some of my stretching stuff with the back, I say don't do the curl. This is one where you want to curl that back all the way down, because that's just going to open up each segment. So it's really nice. And then curl back up as well. So you're really just opening up each segment one at a time. So we're going to do that one more time, just stretching all the way down, touching the floor if we can. Rest your neck, make sure that you're not holding your neck up, because then that's going to put stress on it. So just let everything hang down and relax. And you'll kind of notice a lot of times then as you hold it, you'll go down a little bit further and a little bit further and a little bit further. So that's always nice. Just holding that stretch. And then as the countdown starts, you can slowly roll back up. So just coming back up with that nice roll. So now we're going to kind of go into the upper back, the thoracic area of stretching. So I like doing my hands up on top like this.
Exercise 1.
And so then this time we're going to do a little rotation. So you're taking that elbow and kind of going towards the knee. So this one we're not going to hold it for a long time. Just hold it for about 3 seconds. So we'll go through the 30-second stretch, but we're just going to do these 1 30-second set instead of doing it twice. So just a little pause in between. This kind of just helps stretch that upper back, that thoracic area. So then you come back up, kind of shake it out. The next one is going to be side bending in that same position.
3.
So bringing the hands back up
Exercise 1.
and then just kind of bending over to the side. So this one you want to keep your back fairly straight. You're not curling forward. You're really just going to the side. So this one again is more of a continuous smooth stretch versus actually holding it. So if you want to hold it for 3 to 5 seconds on each side, you can, but you don't have to. You can just kind of go side to side if you want to.
1.
All right. So I'm going to pause real quick because now I'm going to kind of get on the ground. Okay, so that was a quick cut. Now we're on the ground. You have your strap or your belt, towel, leash, whatever you need, a pillow so you're nice and comfy. And now we're going to go into the hips and the upper leg. So I'm going to start it again. It's going to give us about 5 seconds. And so I'm going to do a groin stretch now. So the butterfly is a really good one for the groin stretch. So just putting your feet together, using your elbows to push your legs down, and then lean forward, but really keeping your back straight. So if you have to start out here, if you're really tight, that's okay, you can do that. But the closer your heels get in towards you, the more of a stretch it is. But if you're really flexible and you can come all the way here, put the elbows on your inner thighs and just lean forward for that stretch.
Rest.
Give everything a little break, a little shake out, and we're going to do that one more time.
3.
So what some people like to do is they come in, do that little stretch, and instead of pushing here, they like to kind of bring their hands forward so they can kind of creep them forward a little bit, maybe give themselves a target so they know that they're stretching a little bit more. That's fine too, but I find that people tend to start curling their back, and then that takes away from the stretch a little bit. So I like to keep my back straight and lean forward with my hips. You can do it however you would like to, so whichever one's more comfortable, or you can change it up a little bit if you want to. So now you're going to take your stretch strap, towel, belt, or something like that, and then put it around your foot and lie all the way down for a hamstring stretch. You can bend this one up, keep the leg straight, and then pull it up. Try not to bend this knee. And if you want to pull your toes down a little bit, that'll help get the calves a little bit as well. So just getting that nice stretch in there. So just holding it and make sure that this is nice and locked out, so then you're not bending that knee and not getting that stretch. I'll switch sides back and forth. You don't have to. You can just do them both on one side if you want to. And then again, coming back up. The reason I like to bend the other side is because it takes a little bit pressure off your back. Some people want to put it straight down. If you don't really have any back issues, that's okay. You can definitely do that. But I like it bent up just because I feel like it takes that pressure off of your back. You can get a little bit more stretch comfortably in there. And don't feel like you have to crank it all the way up. Again, you just want to feel that nice stretch through there. And then we're going to come back down, and then we're going to stretch each one again. So putting it, looping around your foot, keeping that knee bent up for comfort, coming up and keeping that leg nice and straight. So just holding it there. And again, if you're up here like this, you're not really getting those calf muscles with the stretch. But if you pull your toes down with that strap, you're going to feel a stretch in your calves as well. And then right behind the knee, because those hamstrings cross this way and those calf muscles cross this way, so they both cross that knee joint. So this is a really great stretch, and you can make it a combination stretch if you want to. And then we're going to switch over to the other side and do the hamstring on this side one more time. Just nice and relaxed.
Exercise 1.
And then bringing it up. So the one after this, we're going to go into an IT band stretch, and the setup's really the same, except you're going to just do a little bit of a change of where your leg position is. So that one's going to be pretty easy just to transition right into doing. So just nice holding that stretch. As you're halfway through, if you feel like you can pull a little bit more, that's fine. Again, as long as it's not painful,
3,
that's really
2,
good.
1, rest.
And then come down and rest. So again, it's the same kind of setup. You're going to have that, but this time I'll keep that knee down so it doesn't get in the way, and you'll see what I'm talking about. Bring the leg straight up, keep the knee straight, and now you're going to just pull it across your body. So if you checked out my Super Joe shirt and you like it, you can go to inkpixie.com. They have a whole bunch of cool things that they can personalize for you. They got shirts, sweatshirts, mugs, all that kind of stuff is really cool. So you can be super like me too. Don't be jealous. And so you should be feeling that stretch on the outside there.
Rest.
And then coming down. And then looping it on the other side.
1,
Bringing that leg down so it doesn't get in the way. Come up and then drop it over. So again, here's kind of where you feel that stretch. That IT band, it comes all the way up to the hip here, and it's your tensor fascia lata when it's up here, and then it turns into that IT band, and it goes all the way across the knee. So some people feel it a lot in their hip, some people feel it down at their knee, some people feel it all over. But the key is when you're stretching,
1,
don't bring your back up. So I'll show you a little bit when we go back to the other side. You really want to keep the top of your back nice and flat. So when we come up
exercise 1,
and come over, you don't want to roll your whole body over, because then you're taking away from the stretch a little bit. You want to try and keep that hip down, your back, lower back down, and just bring that leg up and across. Now some people might not be able to come up this high. They might only be able to go here, but you can still feel that stretch here as well. If people are super flexible, they might have to come up even higher and go over. And again, that's fine. You just put whatever angle is comfortable for you.
rest.
And then one more over here,
3,
and then
2,
bringing it up,
exercise 1,
and then coming over, nice stretch there. So again, if you're feeling it here, that's where you're supposed to feel it. If you're feeling it up on top, your leg's probably not in quite the right position. If you're feeling it in your hamstrings, you're probably just coming up a lot and not over enough. So really try and get it so you're feeling it right through here into that booty, just a little bit in that hip area, getting that nice
3,
stretch.
2, 1.
So now we're going to roll over onto our stomachs, and this time you want to take that loop and put it all the way around your ankle.
3, 2,
Pull it up this way, and we're going to stretch our quad muscle. So with the quads, I'm going to pull this around a little bit. So this is what it's going to look like. Make sure you get comfortable and that belt just sits over your shoulder, and then you're just going to pull until you get that heel almost towards your bottom. So just for the sake of, this is a little bit harder position to get into, I'm going to stretch one side twice in a row instead of alternating back and forth. But what you can see is your heel doesn't have to go all the way towards your booty. It might if you're super flexible, but you don't feel like you have to crank it up there. So again, just around your shoulder, pulling this way. Make sure you're comfortable. If you need to lie all the way down, that's fine. If you want to pull more, you can too. But this is, the stretch should be in your quad, and that front thigh is where you should feel it. If you have tight knee joints, you might feel it in your joint before you feel it in your quad, and that's okay. This is just going to help you get some more flexibility in your knee in general as well. But it's really to focus on that quad. So now I'm just going to switch over to the other leg and pull it around, all the way looping it around, and then make sure it's fairly high, and then just again pulling on that strap. So you don't have to crank on it, but if you're pretty flexible, you want to get that heel as close to your bottom as you can. But again, like I said, if you've got some arthritis or some knee problems, you might only be able to get to about right here before you feel it, and you might feel it in that joint before you actually feel it in the quad muscle.
3, 2,
And
1.
then just
Rest.
kind of relax it back down. But again, if you are getting too much pressure on your elbows, you can just kind of
3,
relax down on the pillow
exercise 1.
like this while you're stretching. So make sure that you're keeping everything else nice and comfortable. You're not really risking injuring anything else while you're trying to stretch something. So if you're not comfortable, you can't get in a comfortable position, check out some of my other videos. I have usually a whole video for just quad stretches or IT band stretches and things like that. So you can go check it out and then pick the one that works best for you, because everybody is a little different.
2, 1.
All right. So now we're going to go into the lower legs to get our calf muscles a little bit here. So you can still take the strap and now put it around the ball of your foot. This time, just relax and then pull your toes as far up towards you as you can. And again, you should feel that stretch right through there. So just a nice pull, shouldn't be painful. Some people, if they have ankle issues, they might feel it in their ankle joint before they feel it in the calf. So again, if this one doesn't quite work for you,
3,
there's a bunch of different ways to stretch it that you can try it a different way and see if it helps. So you don't necessarily have to do this one. And so that's the
3,
great thing about stretching,
1.
just pull,
Exercise 1.
get that stretch, is you can stretch in a whole bunch of different ways and still get a beneficial stretch, but it just might be a little different than what somebody shows you. So if you're working with your physical therapist or a trainer or some kind of health professional and they're showing you how to do something and it just doesn't feel right, let them know, because they should be able to show you a different way to do it and stretch it out. And if they don't, maybe you should ask somebody else.
1.
Little rest with that one. And if you don't have a loop with whatever you're using, if it's like a towel or something,
3,
you can just put
1.
it this way
Exercise
and
1.
hold on with both. So still just getting that pull, protecting that back. If you need to lie all the way down, you can. If you feel like this is uncomfortable, or if you're kind of slouching a little bit, you can lie down and still hold on to whatever you're holding on to and pull if it's long enough. So again, if you've got some issues going on, you can always modify things to help protect you and not risk injuring something else.
3, 2, 1. Rest.
All right, I'm going to do one more on this side. So the important with the calf
3,
stretch
2,
is to keep your leg
Exercise 1.
locked out. So my knee is straight for this, because the next one we're going to go into, we want to bend the knee. And so to stretch out the calf, you really want that knee to be straight, no bend in there. So if there's a bend in there, you're changing the stretch just a little bit. And you definitely want to keep that knee straight when you're stretching those calf muscles, because again, they come and they cross that knee joint. So that knee needs to be straight to get a really good stretch out of it.
3, 2, 1. Rest.
So now you're going to do the same kind of stretch, except your knee is going to be bent, and this is going to stretch the soleus muscle,
1.
which is underneath the calf. So still getting it about on the ball of your foot. Now I'm pulling up, but this time my knee is bent, and that soleus muscle sits right underneath the calf or the gastroc muscles, and it's a nice flat muscle, and it actually looks like a fish. And soleus apparently means fish, maybe in Latin, some other language, and that's why it's called that, is because they originally thought it looked like a fish.
3, 2,
Fun fact for you.
1. Rest.
So again, keeping the
3,
knee
2,
bent this time,
1.
and then just
Exercise
pulling
1.
those toes up towards you. Sometimes with the soleus stretch, again, people tend to feel it sometimes in their ankle joint before they actually feel it in the soleus. Again, that's okay, because that just means that you don't have quite as much flexibility in your ankle. So this is still equally as important, because you want to get this loosened up so then you can stretch out those muscles as well. So even if you feel it here, you still want to stretch it.
Rest. 3, 2, 1. Exercise 1.
So nice big pull there, holding that stretch. For me, I feel it a little bit lower, but you might feel it up a little bit higher too, but I feel mine about right there when I stretch mine. And I actually feel it better on my left side here versus on my right. I do feel it in my ankle just a little bit. I've had lots of sprains on my ankle, and so that joint usually feels it just a little bit more.
1. Rest.
Which means I should really be stretching it out a lot.
3, 2, 1. Exercise 1.
So last one for the soleus, just getting that nice stretch in there. If you feel like you're getting really tired pulling on this, again, there's a way you can stretch out that soleus standing up and just using the floor to kind of stretch it. So if you feel like your arms are getting tired with this one, make sure you check out those stretches so you can try it a different way if you want to. Because again, you don't want to wear out something up here when you're trying to stretch out something there.
1.
So the next stretch is going to be for your anterior tibialis muscles. This is the front ones here. We're going to stretch them together. And so basically you're just coming on your heels like this with your toes flat down. So you want your toenails to be down on the ground. And then just pull up where your knees come off of the ground a little bit. So this is a pretty easy stretch to do, to stretch those. You don't necessarily have to do the 30 seconds because your arms might get worn out. But again, there's a couple different ways you can do this one. If the arms get too tired with this, for the second 30, I'm going to show you doing it kind of laying out, almost like a cobra type of position for yoga, if that's what you're looking for. So you can do it
Exercise 1.
this way as well. So again, whichever one is more comfortable for you. See how my foot's kind of rolled out though? That's going to get those anterior tibialis muscles. If you turn your foot inwards, that's going to get the posterior tibialis muscles. So if you want to alternate back and forth, you can, but you don't have to. Again, if your arms feel tired, like they're starting to wear out, then you can kind of change the position just a little bit. So I'm going to pause real quick. The last couple ones are really just going to be general stretching, not quite as intense with these, not really focusing on one body part, but getting a whole body stretch, doing some deep breathing. I'm not going to talk as much with this one because I really want you to focus on the breathing and the cooling down portion. So even though we're still breaking it up, this is kind of a cooling down component of it. So I'm going to get on all fours and we're going to kind of do a cat dog position. So I'm going to start it back again. And I'm just going to move the pillow out a little bit. So this is quadruped or all fours, and you're just going to come up into a cat where you tuck your chin in and arch your back. Just hold it for about 10 seconds, and then you're going to drop it down and bring your chin up. So this is kind of the dog position or the cow position or the camel. They have a whole bunch of different names, but just kind of gently going back and forth. So the next set, I'm going to not talk as much and I'm going to focus on my breathing a little bit.
1. Rest.
So really doing some deep breathing this time to really get those muscles to stretch out while you're doing it.
2, 1.
So
Exercise 1.
cat tucking in. Breathing out into the dog. So the next one is going to be a prayer stretch. You can do this with your arms out, or you can do this with your arms back. But again, focus on the breathing with this one. So you can come down this way. Or you can put your hands back this way. I personally like putting my arms out because it helps stretch my shoulders as well. And you can kind of go at a little bit of an angle too. So I'm going to do that for this
Exercise
one.
1.
So coming down, nice deep breathing. You can stretch over an angle. This will get your lats a little bit. And then come back over and get this side a little bit.
Three, two, one.
So the last stretch,
Complete.
we're just going to do one, and it's going to be laying out straight as you can, pushing your toes and your feet one way and your arms the other way. So it's almost like if you were just getting pulled in opposite directions, just to stretch everything out. And really take some nice deep breaths. And push, push, push as you breathe out. So there you have it. You should be Gumby by now. So that was your whole body stretch routine. Hopefully you feel loosey-goosey like I do. If you'd like to help support my channel, make sure and click up here. And don't forget to subscribe by clicking down here. And remember, be safe, get flexible, have fun, and I hope you feel better soon.
I've always had a passion for movement, but over the course of my career, I sought out what I felt were some of the best movement coaches, primarily from a linear standpoint. You're really warming up. Got the heater on in the car, now you're here. But what I did is I looked at all these linear coaches, and they were primarily track and field. And I didn't work with anybody track and field. I worked with everybody but track and field, but I wanted to take principles of what they were doing and listen to the things that they were seeing and say, okay, how can I take what they're doing from a technical model and blend that into what I do with athletes of field sport, okay? I think we can all agree that linear qualities are present in sport, but very rarely do we get to what we would consider top-end speed mechanics, and we don't want to make somebody, you know, run like an Olympic sprinter necessarily, but we want them to have concepts that have similarity. And so what I do in my preparation with my athletes is I look at it two ways. I look at myself as a general physical preparation specialist, meaning for the most part, I do have a new job coming up, but for the most part, I'm working with these athletes off season, and I'm trying to restore certain qualities. Those qualities are coordinative, those qualities are mobility, stability, those qualities are relearning patterns that maybe those athletes haven't been working on for quite some time because of getting into season play and skill play. So the way I look at the body is, if I take general locomotion strategies, and if I can be masterful in linear strategies, and then masterful in the deceleration quality of those, if I can be masterful in multidirectional movement, which primarily comprise of a blend of frontal and transverse plane motions, if I can master those movement qualities, I make a better athlete. At the end of the day, that's our job as physical preparation specialists, is we're trying to hand over to the sporting coaches a better athlete. That's my goal. So a lot of what I do, people say, well, all you're doing is rehearsing them to be a sprinter. Sprint qualities, there's a lot of great things to it. Coordinative, tempo, rhythms, elasticity, those are all the things we're trying to really maximize. Now, when I look at linear movement, I break it up into two different training opportunities. I look at what I would consider acceleration, and acceleration is a blend, right? It's all a blend into different mechanics. Every step of acceleration starts to morph into what we see at top end speed. But I have a specific day that I work on acceleration, because I don't think enough athletes get pure work on acceleration enough. A lot of times they get a lot of conditioning. What does conditioning promote? In your opinion, when we look at the mechanical model, It promotes more of a cyclical nature, more of what we would consider top end speed, but it's poor mechanics typically. You know, we know we're going to run this for X distance. We know we're going to do it for this repeated times, so let's be worse at it. And that's what I see a lot. I see a lot of poor technique done because the athletes accommodate to the workload. So I want to reverse that model and tell my athletes, let's be the master of 5 to 10 yards of acceleration, because those are the bursts that matter. As you'll see with Ian Jeffries later, it's from change of direction then into acceleration. It's not change of direction into top end speed mechanics. So at the end of the day, how can I be the master of 5 to 10 yards, 10 meters of acceleration? And so I pepper that into my athletes, because that's all sport play is. It's a series of those things happening over and over again of start, stop, accelerate, start, stop, accelerate. Every so often we do blend into more top end speed. Doesn't happen a ton. And I guess it does matter the sport you're working with as well. But so I break it up into acceleration and then maximum velocity or top end speed. Now the good thing about both of them, you're going to hear a lot of similarities with what I talk about with them, and you'll see some similarities in themes within the drilling. We will go through a lot of techniques and drills that I think everybody in here can do and should do. Some of the drills we'll do, I'll do the drills either shoot or barefoot as well. I'm a big believer in barefoot work with my athletes. I think there's a lot to be said with the understanding of the mechanism of the foot. I'm going to discuss that a little more at length as we go on today. But I'll also talk about linear movement from a holistic nature as well. Okay, I'm a firm believer that we see common themes of injury patterns based on, I believe that we have like propulsive and absorption-based issues. Propulsive-based issues are typically soft tissue. If I'm working with an athlete and I see that athlete overstride, what do those athletes typically do? In your history of watching athletes and working with athletes? Yeah. Yep, hamstring. Bicep femoris typically as well. Bicep femoris, lateral gastroc. It's a propulsion injury. They're out of position. They're propelling at the wrong position. Their base of support is landing ahead of their mass, and they're at such an elongated position of the bicep femoris. Plus, when they go to reach, they're usually striking 4th and 5th met, which is going to, or 4th and 5th, and that's going to put more tension on the bicep femoris. So you start to notice commonalities. Athletes who under-recover, what do they typically do? Under-recover meaning they swing the back leg far, far back behind them. You ever notice a trend with those athletes? Yeah, hip flexor adductors, right? Your rectus femoris is a 2-joint muscle. So when that thigh drifts back, the thigh is still going back in negative acceleration as the heel is casting up to the rear end. That's putting that rectus and anything that crosses that knee, rectus and sartorius, on a significant stretch. So again, to me, it's a positional issue. It's propulsive. We're not getting back to the right position in a timely enough fashion. But we look at the adductor strains because we have brevis, longus, and pectineus, they're hip flexors as well. So those guys are being carried for the ride. So you deal with athletes that have a lot of osteitis pubis, a lot of, even sports hernias, things like that can come from a poor understanding of the recovery cycle. So a lot high velocity change of direction in sport, and that's when we see the muscular system get pulled back, too much load against us, and now the connective tissue has got to be the ones that try to back engineer maybe chronic injury patterns, things like that. And one of the best ways we can do that is to reestablish good posture position. I'll say it a few times today, but joint position dictates muscle function. The better alignment I have, the better rhythm, the better timing, and the better elasticity I have within the run. Now, if we're looking at acceleration, I have what I call my 4 Ps. And this even holds true for top end speed, but my 4 Ps are simple. First one you can already figure out, it's posture. And that posture changes. When I'm in acceleration, that posture has a relative angle to it, an angulation to it. Relative angulation, when we look ear, shoulder, hip, knee, ankle. Don't hate on my artistry, just understand the themes. Posture. The second one is position. Relative to posture, there's got to be an optimal position that I go through. Well, what we know with some of the great movers and great runners is we know that there's a certain position they get to on the front side of the hip axis that gives them more leverage and greater ability to generate torque into the ground. So position is my second thing I pay attention to. To me, I try to make things as simple as possible. I try to take something that is relatively complex and see if we can make it more simple. After position, I have placement. So placement, going back to what I said about propulsion. Placement, once I've got to position, now where is my placement of my foot into the ground? Where is it? Is it under the hips? Is it behind the hips? Where is it? I definitely don't want it in front of the hips. I want it more ultimately under the hips and or behind the hips, depending on the phase of running I'm in. If I'm more in an early acceleratory phase, I'm pushing back behind the hips. It's more horizontally driven. If I'm working at more top end speed, it's more underneath the hips as I go. If you took a bicycle and you flip the bicycle upside down, everybody's done that, yes? Yeah. And I take that wheel and to get it started, I pull it, I rip it, what direction? Horizontally, to get it going. How do I go? They lose the elasticity of the Achilles complex because now you've taken a relatively long lever in the foot and now you're shortening that lever by the phalanges. The other thing that you have when athletes strike here is, again, the want to overreach. They want to feel for their next step. It's like going downstairs. Nobody goes downstairs and goes ball of the foot. They go downstairs and they reach with the toes. It's a proprioceptive feel. So when the athletes start to overreach, you're going to see that casting feeling for that next step. Again, it's ball of the foot. And again, I do think that you'll see some athletes who are varimed. If an athlete's varimed, they're going to be more apt to strike fourth and fifth. That's okay. That's okay. But at least try to get them into more of a midfoot strike, in my opinion, or midfoot to forefoot. Now, when you say ball of the foot, a lot of athletes still confuse this as ball of the foot because they can feel the ball of the foot hitting the ground, but it's got to be here where we're loaded.
That's the same for both acceleration and then mark.
100%, yeah. Yeah, same positioning, in my opinion, absolutely. Again, we have so much more elastic potential from that Achilles. When we have the ball of the foot, when we hit here more on the phalanges, we're going to have a lot more participation from like the flexor digitorum, flexor hallucis, but we won't have as much elasticity from the Achilles complex, in my opinion, based on the loading. So I pay attention to ultimately dorsiflexion as my key setup point into placement. Because the better dorsiflexion I have, or the better talocrural range I have there, the more stiff this ankle complex is going to be once I hit the ground. When I look at running, I don't look at it as triple extension per se. A lot of people think, strike the ground and really push off the toe. I don't think about it that way. I think about it this way, is put the ankle in a stiff, rigid position, hit the ground, have a stable foundation to allow these guys to generate more force. Because at the end of the day, when we look at jumps and we look at sprints, what are we trying to minimize for the most case? Time on the ground. We can argue in acceleration, we do want to spend more time on the ground to go through a fuller range of motion, but we don't want to spend on, we want to be compliant yet resilient at the same time. It's a give and take. So at what point are we so compliant into the ground that we're not as elastic? And we have to pay attention. The biggest thing I pay attention to with my eyes when I watch people run is timing. The timing at which when something just doesn't look as natural, that looks like they're spending more time on the ground than they should be. The arms are delayed relative to the legs, or the legs are delayed relative to the arms. To me, there's a timing that's off. When those timing components are off, I look at strike position, I look at thigh position, and then ultimately strength to weight ratios. Those are the things I pay attention to. And again, how they strike in the ground. If they foot, from my experience, they've got more of a stable foundation when they hit the ground and they're more elastic coming off. They have a more stable foundation to provide power into the ground. Now, how versed is everybody in here on pronation, supination of the foot? Because because I think that's something we should talk about before we get into this. Yeah, kinda. Yeah. So we have two different kinds of pronation, supination. Okay. We have open chain and we have closed chain. Open chain, closed chain pronation, they're almost opposite of each other in a weird way. So pronation, if I were to say which one is stable, which one is unstable, which would you say? If I said pronation, which one's unstable? So
supination was stable.
Supination is more stable.
More stable.
When we're in closed chain, correct. When the foot's on the ground, a supinated foot is a locked foot. When we're on the ground, a pronated foot is an unstable foot, and it's not bad or good. It's ultimately like saying, does somebody breathe in or breathe out? They both have to happen. A pronated foot should comply and absorb to terrain, and then as we move over, as we go over into stance, the foot locks and then becomes stable, stiff and stable as we go into supination. Now, when the foot's off the ground, so the rules are this. A pronated foot, by definition, is dorsiflexion, right? My foot's dorsiflexed right now because the earth is pushing up on it. It's slight abduction, or it's adduction of midfoot, and then abduction of forefoot. A pronated foot is collapsing of the arch, okay? When the arch collapses, the phalanges abduct. There's three phases to the foot. There's a rear foot, a midfoot, and a forefoot. They don't move as one. And that's what people always show when they show open stance, open chain. They'll show the foot moving as one. It doesn't move that way. It's triplanar. It's triplanar, so the foot needs to go through an ability to be compliant to the ground and then to be stiff and lock. We want that. In training, we're always going for stiffness, right? We're always training stiffness. How stiff, how stiff? Well, there's got to be an element of compliance too, because it's got to go from relaxed to rigid. That's how we do everything in our profession. And we need to have good sense of mobility through the foot, otherwise we end up with different issues up the chain as well. So actually, everybody stand up real quick. You can keep your shoes on, or you can take them off however you want. So this is what I want everybody to do. We're going to go arms across our shoulders, and all I want you to do is rotate to your right. Rotate to your right. When you rotate it to your right, your left foot just pronated, your right foot supinated. You feel the difference where that left foot just, that navicular is pushing into the track, and that right foot, now you're creating that arch. Now go back the other way. Now when we do that, when we go into that pronation, the rear foot, what did it just do? It everted on the left foot. If this is my calcaneus, it just everted. That means my navicular just pronated to the floor. That shows you right there that there's triplanar movement in that foot. And the reason why that's important is because, what did I say we want to try to minimize when we hit the ground in jumping and sprinting?
The time.
Yeah, amortization, right? We want to minimize amortization. The more compliant or the more mobile of a foot I have, plus a more stable foot, the less time I'll spend on the ground. Now, if we can teach our athletes to prepare for ground contact by pre-activating in the dorsiflexion, we just took the middle guy out. A lot of athletes will drop, absorb, stiff, and roll off. My thinking and thought process, as you'll see when we drill, is always toe up, hit and drive. So I'm trying to minimize amortization by setting up the foot into a locked foot. So the reason why I bring this whole thing up, because pronation on the ground is an unlocked foot. Pronation off the ground, it's a locked foot. Supination, that's an unstable foot off the ground. Has everything to do with what's being pushed into. So people get confused on pronation, supination being a stable versus unstable. Has everything to do with context of where the foot is. So a pronated foot on the ground is unstable, and then we get stiff and we go into supination. A supinated foot off the ground, that's an unstable foot, but a pronated foot off the ground, that is a very stable foot. That was all just on placement, wow. And the last one is patterning. Patterning, this is probably the most important overlooked part in any fundamental movement sessions I watch. It's simple marching and skipping patterns. It's all it is. Patterning, rhythmic tempos. The more rhythmic we are, the more elastic we become. And one of my mentors showed me this one a long time ago. He said, take your index finger, hit it down onto the board as fast and as hard as you can, then relax it and do the same. He says, that's efficient. That's using the storage of elasticity. And that's how when you hear great track coaches talk about being relaxed, that's what we're talking about. Staying relaxed so we can maximize the storage of elasticity. So using the stretch shortening cycle, understanding how to have relaxed tempos to maximize elasticity. And so many of my drills are really predicated on that aspect. So posture, position, placement, and patterning. These are the 4 P's that I look for in acceleration and that I look for in top end speed. Now the first thing we're going to do, I'd say about 80% of what we're going to do, everybody will be able to do it. It won't be high velocity work. It's just going to be working on these 4 things, and then I'm going to show you how I progress them into things that do have a little bit more oomph to them, okay? How many people are going to probably try and do everything today from effort, like a sprint aspect? I got one for sure. I saw you on the bike already. Anybody else?
If Kiron goes, I'll follow.
So here's what we're going to do. I'd say let's try and get as many people as we can early on, starting with this, and then you guys just pull yourselves out as we go. So let's grab a dowel. We'll start down here at the yellow cones. So, what's that?
It's not going to be too violent.
No. Not early. You guys you've had a long week.
Catch my good fun.
Best man to shoot. Always. Oh, you're my friend. You are. I'm who? What? Crazy. You guys think about it. Yeah, they're pretty true. I do remember. We're at the same top.
All right, guys, here's what we'll do. So, going back to what I feel, I'd say early on when I started teaching speed, it was like, hey, let's get down and go, right? It was, let's do our wall drills, let's get down and go. And the more I understand how complex the body is, the more I understand we have to really go back and redefine what we feel posture is when we look at sprint technique. To me, one of the most important things that I try to get out of my athletes in the dowel drills that we're about to do is just understanding stance leg, lift leg. And understanding that I want to try and get this split into hip flexion, hip extension. I'm trying to work on these mobility qualities and stretch and do all of our psoas stretches, but I want to put them into a little bit more functional or transferable aspect. So we'll start here at the yellow cones, and since you put the cameras there, we'll go that way. So put the dowels on our shoulder, and all I want you guys to do is take walking steps and framing every step. When I say framing every step, here's what I'm looking for. Thigh up, toe up, heel up, knee up, tall on the down leg. Frame the leg, figure 4, boom. Again, making posture emphasis. Toe is up every time, and take yourself just into a walking tempo. Making sure that we get the foot out in front. When I say out in front, it's right underneath the knee. And we'll take it 10 meters. I remember you from last time I was here. Good to see you, sir. Great to see you. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. And what I do is I start to notice different qualities on the athletes. Inability to dorsiflex the foot. Why is it? Right? Some people dorsiflex, some people don't. Some people drop. Is it a neuromuscular thing? Is it an awareness issue, or is it a previous injury? Who knows? There's a lot of reasons why somebody might not be able to dorsiflex the foot. But I keep working on it. It could be talus position. It could be history of ankle sprains. Well, from what I've paid attention to with my athletes, if I have somebody that has a history of ankle, they start to lose dorsiflexion. When they start to lose dorsiflexion, the knee becomes the culprit. Okay? A lot of patellofemoral syndrome, patellotendinosis tends to follow a lot of ankle sprains and lack of range of motion in the ankle joint. So one thing that I want to make sure that I do is I'm always reinforcing good dorsiflexion. But as you saw when we were taking a walking tempo here, how did I wanted you guys to stay flat-footed on that down leg. That pronation, supination that I showed you guys, it's a teeter-totter. It's a balance point. Too much pronation is bad, too much supination is bad. We've got to find the middle ground. These walking drills help us find a middle stable ground of balance in a teeter-totter of pronation, supination. Let's do the same thing coming back. I want you to do me a favor. Pay attention to maybe why you abduct so much in the forefoot. Cool. Ready? Flat-footed. Flat-footed. I want it flat-footed, and here's why. Your placement into the ground needs to match the speed at which you're moving. We would not walk toe, heel. We would walk more heel toe. So I'm actually okay with more of a heel strike, believe it or not. Flat-footed or more heel pressure. It sounds backwards, I know. But the degree of speed that we travel at will change the degree or where we are on the foot. When we walk, we heel strike. When we jog, we midfoot strike. And when we sprint, we're more midfoot, forefoot strike. So we move up on that foot to gain more leverage characteristics from the Achilles. Good. Chest up, eyes up. And you'll start recognizing a few things on yourself. Differences in ability to hold, balance. All right, now let's take it to a skipping tempo. Same idea, we'll take our dowel, and now we're going to start getting to more of that ball to foot contact. Now we're taking it more skipping tempos. So same thing, I'm toe up, heel up, knee up. I'm trying to get the split here and then striking back underneath my hips. Now this is more of an acceleration drill, right? Because the difference between acceleration and top end speed, what is the pattern of the leg? In acceleration, we're more piston driven. There's no heel to my butt action. Top end speed, we start to close that gap. In between acceleration and top end speed, we have characteristics of acceleration that start to blend to that maximum velocity look of that cyclical action. Every step we take, if I accelerate and I'm at a lean, let's just assume 45-degree lean. Every step I take, my torso angles will start to change. As my torso angles start to change, so do my thigh angles. When we're in acceleration, our thigh position will most likely be perpendicular if we're punching out correctly. But most people try to raise that thigh, get as up as high as they can. With the angle that they're at with their position, they're setting themselves up for failure. Here's why. Each step from acceleration should do this. Boom, 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 boom. As my torso raises, my thigh lifts. If somebody comes out of step one with a big high thigh position, what's going to happen on their next subsequent steps? They're going to drop down. So they're going to lose leverage and propulsion ability, or the ability to climb out of the hole based on an inappropriate coaching cue. Really get that thigh up there. How many times have we done that as coaches? Lift those knees, get that thigh up. It's got to be appropriate angles. It's got to be similar angles to what we want. It's still perpendicular to the angle of the torso, And then as I raise, same thing happens. Make sense?
So by piston, you mean right leg life acceleration. When you go up there, you're going to just like...
So, and don't, like we classify them from drilling aspects as they're two separate things. This is piston based, and it happens typically, I'll try not to step on my shoelace, but it happens typically the first couple steps, punching and driving. But most athletes coming out of this stance that I just did, you know what they'll do? They start to pull their heel up to their butt like they're at top end speed. You can hear it on mondo surfaces like this, and you can see it because they'll kip over. They'll almost fall. Because it's not complementary angles. They're spinning too much backside, and they're getting more forward momentum over. And that's why you see athletes a lot of times come out of a break, and if they're cyclical, they'll almost stumble over themselves. But if they're piston action, they're stable, stiff, and ready. So let's take it to the Dow A skips again. So double skip rhythm, I'll show it one more time. So piston action, my heel is not coming up to my butt. I'm not trying to waste time back here, not right now. Ready, go. Good, walk it back and we'll do it again. Walk it back and we'll do it again. And what you'll find is I have picked about 4 drills from an acceleration standpoint, 4 drills from a top end speed standpoint, and I groove the heck out of them. I get good at grooving just a handful of drills. Ready, go. Toe up, try that ground. Try not to drop the floor. Good, paying attention to your own cadence. Listening to rhythmic tempos of the feet. Listening to rhythmic tempos of the feet hitting the ground. You know when you hear a rhythmic sound versus non-rhythmic. Really? Yes, sir.
How much are you driving down on that, or are we just working on the rhythm?
Yeah, I'm just working on tempo. So I do see that a lot where coaches say, really drive that ground. I want to hear that foot hit the ground. Couple things. When you hear the foot hit the ground when somebody's sprinting and it's loud, you know what that typically is?
Too much ground contact.
Too much ground contact time, inappropriate placement of the foot, inappropriate slap of the foot is typically what it is. So it's a poor cue in a lot of cases. So on a drill such as this, as I told you get back down to the ground, right? Because you were kind of just drifting up here. I still want my athletes to understand I need to get up and get back down. It's here. I still want to get back down, but I'm not hitting there. That's surface area a lot of times, or too much time on the ground. The inability to use good elasticity. Let's walk back. Let's get one more. So, has anybody asked why we use the PVC, the dowels yet? Posture. And the other thing, the reason why I like using I got these from some coaches who I really love and use as mentors down at Altus. To me, sometimes the arm carriage can distract what you see through the trunk. So I kind of like to take away the arms just so I can see what's happening here. We all know at the end of the day, this is a system of coordination. So I'm not trying to be hypocritical of what my stance was from a rhythmic standpoint, but it's a nice way to look at, can they get good stacking of hip and shoulders, and what is their element of trunk stability? Because as athletes start to use their arms, you can mask a lot of balance issues when they come out of a start. You can mask a lot of bad positional issues with your arms. And you'll see that when we get into acceleration. We're going to accelerate with the PVCs. I always say PVCs, but with the dowels on our back. And you'll get a sense of who has not enough hip projection, because you're almost going to fall on your face. So it's a good feedback tool. Ready? One more time. Go. Toe up, left side. thigh up, and foot out in front of you. Good, and try not to cycle your leg back down though. So don't get to here and cycle it down, right? We just want to get from here to here. Now, a couple things we'll see on these skips is we'll see athletes coming up and they'll pull here. Is that wrong? I don't think it's wrong, but I don't think it's maximizing optimal angles. If I can get to 90 degrees hip, 90 degree knee, 90 degree angle, what do we know about 90 degree angles? Greatest leverage for torque. So if I've got 3 joints that strike the ground after being preloaded in that position, I've got more bite into the ground, especially when I start to turn myself horizontal. So instead of striking here, I think when athletes pull up to here, they strike more straight down. I think when we get here, we get more of this complementary effect of co-contraction of hamstring, glute, and even quads at that point. I think when athletes pull here and they strike down, it's a lot more quad dominant in my opinion. And I think that's the other reason why you'll hear a loud foot. They're not getting enough posterior chain drive. Let's go ahead and walk it back now. We'll put the PVCs just behind us, and now let's start incorporating arm rhythm. All right. Now we incorporate a little bit of arm action here. The arms, when we move our arms, what are they? Front to back action, side to side, front to back. Where's our axis of motion mainly? The glenohumeral joint, right? Here. Now, what's my arm action in the front? I come in. So I don't want to go here, because if I've got an athlete who's pretty broad, that's going to create a lot of torque, a lot of rotation. We want to utilize rotational moment to move us here. However, but we want to create that rotational moment at the right time. So moving in this direction, I shorten into the pecs. The pecs horizontally adduct. So as I bring my arm swing, I bring it in toward midline, and then I bring it out. In toward midline, bring it out. Because as I drive back, I've got great elasticity here in the pec and the bicep, and that snaps the arm right back up. So instead of here, it's a little bit in. Now what do we know about levers? Longer lever generates more force, shorter lever rotates faster around an axis, right? So when I front swing, I bend my elbow shorter than 90. When I back swing, it's greater than 90. Maximize your leverage characteristics. My arm actually doesn't come up to my head and my eyes. It comes up to about my chin and then back past my hip. My arms are not, I'm not straightening the elbow. I'm keeping bend and tension on the elbow. That way I've got good tension here to swing the arm forward. When I talk to my athletes about arm action, I say there's only one direction we drive the arms. What direction is it? Back. Back. I teach them back because back elicits extension of the leg. When we have athletes that are very heavy on the front side, they spend a lot of time on the back side with the leg as far as a delayed recovery action. When they drive here, they push more fully through the hip. And that back, it's hand back. A lot of people try to get jogger's arm and drive here. It's hand back. Cool? So let's go ahead and take skipping tempo with arm action. Posture's a priority. Yep. Foot out in front a little bit more. Did you feel that? Is it really? Walking back. Walking back, let's do it again. Ready? Go. Try to switch your arms and legs. What age athletes does everybody work with in here? All over the board?
Teenage, high school.
Teenage? Okay. About across the board? Any middle school or before high school?
About 12-year-old.
Okay, cool. So a couple things you'll see. One, you'll see it even in the high schoolers, but you'll see a lot of ipsilateral patterns in skipping, right? See that? And that's an easy one to fix. Obviously, make them aware of it. But I just have them start walking. Have them start walking and not thinking about it, and they'll go into an opposing pattern. But a lot of times when the athletes are consumed, they start going into that ipsilateral pattern. Walk back. I don't know if you felt that at all. You were saying what I'm saying, leg. I don't know if you felt it. Thanks, Eric. Yeah, great question. I guess both, but it's more for recovery. And this is exactly how I do a training session. Yeah, coach was just asking me, why am I having you walk back? And that it's just active recovery within a session, right? I think too many times coaches like, it's a speed session, let's go, go, go. No, I want to optimize rest and recovery so technique can be sound. Let's go one more time here. Ready, go. Foot out in front of you, left foot. There. Feel that? Good. Lift that in front, lift that side. All right, walk it back one more time. Now grab your I want to keep saying PVC. Grab your dowel. It's all I use is PVC.
Now we're having an argument here.
Yes.
Thinking about your heart or thinking about your head?
Neither. Actually, you know what? Neither. No, you know what?
That's the best
So,
question we've got all week.
no, let me tell you something. That's a great question, though, because to me, which one's more complex? Leg action is more complex. One of the biggest cues I use with all my athletes, especially when I'm getting ready for the NFL Combine, I have a 6 to 8 window to get them very, very fast. I've got to be quick with my cueing, and I've got to be what's going to take care of the most problems. Usually if you take care of arm action, it does take care of leg action, because there is a rhythm with both. And as I mentioned earlier, if arm action is too far forward, they spend too much time back. If arm action is too far back, they spend too much time front. If I find the happy medium, it usually cleans up the leg cycle.
Is that why you say start there, posture's priority, because posture takes care of both?
Yeah, and there's a lot of other reasons as well. From like what I talked about earlier with like the deep flexors and pubitis issues that a lot of athletes run into because they're maybe extremely posteriorly tilted, or they've got hyperlordotic and they're drawn in here. Once I can get posture, now I can get the natural elasticity of that tissue to fire at normal length and positions without as much strain against them. But if we have some, I'll show it in some wall drills in a second. If we have somebody that's excessively kyphotic, what happens to their pelvis? It posteriorly tilts. Everything has a harmony. Have you ever watched somebody vertical jump with looking down? What can't they do? They can't extend their hips. Yeah. So same thing. If we have somebody who's here, their pelvis is going to posteriorly tilt, and if the pelvis posteriorly tilt, I said it earlier, joint position dictates what? Muscle function. So if I'm kyphotic, pelvis is posteriorly tilted, what can't the glutes do? Extend the hips very well. And what do we know about acceleration? The goal is to push back to get posterior drive of hamstrings and glutes. But if you don't have good postural control, particularly in those high school kids that you guys work with, I know I see it in my college kids who, maybe spend a lot of time on the upper body here, or they're just unaware of their posture, and this is how they walk around. But it's hard for them to get that extension, not to mention the habits they create in the weight room, right? They squat and they come to here. Well, they're always shortened here. And so they're unable to get these split positions I talk about without having a significant amount of strain on the hip flexors and without that harmony. You'll see somebody run. You guys have curved treadmills, you know what I'm talking about, the Woodway curves? It's a great tool to just watch from a frontal plane and just see the thigh swing back. And somebody who's really tight in the hip flexors, you'll see it prematurely lift the thigh. There needs to be a nice element to swing back before it initiates back up. When you see somebody prematurely come up, you're so tight on the anterior side that they can't extend back. They can over time if you're working and rehearsing on these drills. And a lot of my specific exercises in the weight room are meant at doing this. I do a lot of single-legged hip thrusts that are meant at creating this extension flexion pattern and this mobility. I can show you guys some of this stuff later if you want. Okay, so now let's take the dowel, PVC, whatever we want to call it, and now we're just going to go into a single exchange. So we'll start with the first group up, and you guys are just going to start and stick. Whoop. This is a fantastic exercise to really promote and work on that. Good. Foot out in front of you a little bit. Right. There. Foot out in front. There you go. Foot out in front. There. Feel that? There you go. Good. Cool. Welcome back. Next one we're going to do is a double exchange. So people talk about this in our field all the time. Mastering fundamentals, right? But do we really master fundamentals? Never. People talk a great game in our industry about it. This is the same stuff I do with any of my elites. Like, I rewrite the script for them. We go back and do these every offseason because their fundamentals get softened in the season. Injuries, awareness, other skills that they work on. What's a greater skill in sport than sprinting? Right? In most sports, it's king. In most sports.
And a lot of probably sports here, you might be exposed to it for a couple of sessions.
Yeah.
And it's something to say, right, we're going to concentrate on this. But then if results aren't going right, the manager's like, get that away.
Condition.
You know, we need to forget about that stuff and come back to that later, and they never do.
Yeah, which is ironic, right? Yeah. Because the more efficient you learn how to sprint, the better your conditioning gets. It's ironic. And less injury pathology less pathology you can have. So now let's take it to a 2 count. So we're going to start with right leg up. And if you have to double clutch like that, that's fine. Whoop. I'm in your first name. Kira. Okay. And your first name? Claudia. Exactly what I don't want to see. I love it. Here we go. Same thing. So beautiful. So this is why I take the arms away. What did you almost do? You almost ate shit. Can I say that?
Kind of.
And the reason why, when he came out here, what was his leg action? It was sickly. It was more heel to butt. He was getting the heel lift to butt. So when he goes heel lift to butt, where's his torso going? Down. If he was using his arms, he could counterbalance that. And that's what athletes always do, is they make up for bad positions by having counterbalance with the arm swing. Remove the arms, see what happens. So let's see what happens if you get a little bit more thigh punch forward and avoid heel carry up to your rear end. Where's the Go again.
Oh, you want me to run naturally, you don't thinking.
Right. Don't think. I want to run. Are you good, Ron? You got really good mechanics. Are you good?
Yeah.
Okay. I've been watching all. While you're drilling, you've got really good positions that you hit. And a lot of times what you see an athlete do in drilling, they'll do when they start running as well. And it's on, make it on you. Don't do anything crazy. Yeah. So a little bit of, he gets the thigh position, get a little toe drag, a little Usain Bolt, and then he really elongates back. What I'll do is I'll get set up here, I'll load up, and it's, so I'm trying to climb out of the hole with my thighs, right? I'm trying to climb out of the hole. What was the difference between my run and their run? I didn't spend as much time backside. I pushed, and then I got right back up, correct? Yeah. Which they did is they drift. And what I said earlier, when you drift, one, your thigh angle is going to be lower every step. This is a timing thing. If I delay here, I can't get back up here if I'm delayed back there. Everything's based on the side, the side. You have to back engineer it. What preceded where you should have been? If I'm high on the backswing, there's no way in hell I'm going to get the thigh up. But if I get the thigh up, or if I push and pull up, I get the thigh to the right position. But if I drift, it's going to be low. So understand that, like the setup of that recovery is going to set up where you're able to pull that hammer back to. I always say when the hammer strikes higher, when the hammer swings higher, we can strike with more force to the ground. But it's relative to the lean I'm at. Let's get 2 more runs. And I want you to think about, for sure, starting with a little bit more shin angle on your lead leg. And as you come out, think about punching the knee and the foot forward. Knee and the foot forward. And then driving back behind you. Better? Yeah, you can feel it, right? Here's what we'll do. Let's do that.
You want to get break out of it.
We'll say that again?
You want to get
No. Carry as long as you can. Now what will determine how long you can carry acceleration? Really two main things. What's your ankle mobility on that first step? Dorsiflexion capability, but what is your relative strength? Number one thing to determine who can hold longer. Let me grab my phone real quick, and what we'll do, since there's only a few of us here, why don't we video, and I'll slow down what I'm talking about. Does that sound cool?
Yep.
Okay.
Lauren, are you saying that what you want is, say on my next run, you want me to dig out of the hole by driving my thigh forward?
Yes.
And up?
Yes.
And out?
More forward than up, though.
So on my last one, I was rotating?
Yes.
Not extending?
You get extension, but then immediately pull up into hip flexion.
Will I lose leg extension if I do that?
It's always going to be a rob Peter to pay Paul scenario, but where can you get maximal power? You want to go? And you can hear that, right? You hear how loud that is? And that's the strike is right down, it's not behind it. Will you video mine real quick? Try not to lose this stuff. Oh, I need to see that. I know, just go. Yeah.
I know, yeah.
We good? Over out there. Probably battery came out. All right, now let's take a look at these. Okay. All right. So, oh, that's me. Okay, let's see. Do I screw it up? See my position there? Position there? Yeah. Boom. Is my heel coming up to my ass?
No.
Look at my angle of my torso. Finish the push and extension. This foot's in dorsiflexion, strike back down, and it's behind me. You see what I mean?
Yeah.
Like we can sit there and argue that it's behind, but I'm pushing. We can argue that it's down, but I'm actually pushing behind me. Not bad for 45. Shit. And watch the difference here. See that heel? See that? You guys see that?
So it's about driving the knee forward as opposed to cycling the leg.
100%. I'm trying to maximize those angles.
No, his improved.
Well, agreed, right?
Yeah, his is improved big time.
Yep.
That torso angle there now, won't it?
No, it didn't improve.
Yeah, that's not going to help either.
Straight away from the...
Yeah. And we'll go back to mine real quick in a sec, because you'll see what sets up mine. See, like... Your name?
John.
John? Yeah, so we'll load you up a little bit. I'll go back to mine in a second.
Well, I'm not worried about my torso angle. It's my angle of release that matters.
Yeah, but torso's gonna... Yeah.
So here's my release angle.
Yeah, that's good, but then watch that heel starts to flip right to your ass.
Yeah, that's too high.
Okay? And so then you're a little bit shallow on the thigh position. And then...
It's just a knock-on effect of bad start. Overthinking all this.
Yeah, so... I think the biggest difference what I do is see how I'm loaded on that front leg, and then look at my back leg. See how I'm loaded on it too? I can push off both feet now simultaneously as I come out too.
That looks very vertically directed to me.
Vertically directed?
Like if you look, like if you watch your shin or your front leg, and as it strikes down, look at the shin angle. Oh no, that's not bad.
Yeah. Other arm. There you go. There you go. I'll do one more. I'll load up. Load to the hips, I load to the back leg. Punch strap. And again, I'm not concerned with 10 meters. I'm concerned with 2 steps, 3 steps. That's what I care about the most. Now, we're talking race strategy, but if we don't hit the first couple steps good, like the rest of the race isn't going to be clean if we're talking about training. So I really put a huge emphasis in what happens step 1, step 2, step 3. I think it's pretty important.
Do you find athletes pick the first step a little bit easier? Just watching the match, like it looked like the first step was improved, the second, third one, but then as soon as you got the second and third step, you just fell back.
Yeah, 100%. That's a great point. Like athletes will gravitate, or they'll put good emphasis into 1 or 2 steps and not feel that blend yet. It just takes time. It's feedback, back and forth from coach to athlete. The thing that I love is my athletes are exposed to this, you know, more of a model, is they'll come back and say, oh, I know exactly what I did there. Like I have athletes that can tell me when they're pulling their heel up to the butt because they can feel the loss of power. Because once you start finding power, it's night and day difference it's hard to revert back to bad mechanics once you feel it right. Do we have elastic bands? Like any accommodating resistance bands? Do you guys use video a lot, back and forth with athletes, or at least for yourself? Yeah, and you can pick up some really cool things from video. One thing a mentor of mine, Dan Paff, always said, he goes, don't always, a couple things, sometimes we get so hyper aware in slow-mo, don't look at slow-mo too often, because it's taking away context of rhythm. You know, oh, this is out of position. Well, if you actually watch it in real time, it's not out of position, it was the right timing. But also watch things in front to back as well. Because again, you can see, you know, thigh positions pretty well, how clean they push back in that thigh angle. Oh, perfect. So now we can take this, so now we can say, I go back and forth between a lot of my posture, and then I'll go back and forth to some sprint action. And then take them also into a little bit of, I don't want to say towing work, because it's more reinforcement and mechanics. And I think this kind of stuff right here is really what helps the athletes. Well, that might be too much resistance. Let me give you a John, do you mind resisting him? So, try that one first. So, I love. And then take them also into a little bit of, I don't want to say towing work, because it's more reinforcement and mechanics. And I think this kind of stuff right here is really what helps the athletes. Well, that might be too much resistance. Let me give you a John, do you mind resisting him? So, try that one first. So, I love these drills right here. They're probably my bread and butter. All we're going to do is we're just going to march with that elastomer against us. So all you're going to do, John, is provide him resistance that you can lean, and just begin a marching tempo, but begin with a lean. Yep. So let's start back a little bit. Now, feet together. There you go. Engage. There you go, chest. Or like forward toward those cones.
All right. Is that kind of foot